I want you to imagine a room full of people. Let's suppose our room has the following 4 people in it. There's Joe, who has a red hat and size 4 shoes. There's Marcy, who has a blue hat and size 7 shoes. There's Cheryl, who has a green hat and size 4 shoes. And Abdul, who has a blue hat and size 6 shoes. Okay, now I can make various statements about this room full of people. Some true, some false. Here's an example. There is someone with a blue hat in this room. This statement happens to be true. Here's a false one. All hats in this room are either blue or green. Now, before we go further, let's ask ourselves, how do we know whether a statement is true or false? Here's what I do. Let's take the first statement. There is someone with a blue hat in this room. This type of statement asserts the existence of something. It's called an existence statement. So I hold up my statement in front of the 4-person party like a little Geiger counter and check each person out. I hold it up to Joe, and the Geiger counter is silent. That's because the Geiger counter is a blue hat Geiger counter. It will only start clicking near blue hats. I hold it up to Joe, and it is silent. Then I hold it up to Marcy, and it goes beep. Marcy has a blue hat. Once it goes beep, I've discovered the truth of this statement. We could check out Cheryl and Abdul too, but we don't have to. We already know it is true. The proof of this statement then is to hold up the Geiger counter to Marcy. Now let's take the second statement. All hats in this room are either blue or green. This type of statement says something about all the people. It's called a universal statement. We can imagine it as a Geiger counter too. It goes off in response to blue or green hats. Both colors cause it to beep. But this time I have to hold it up to everyone and make sure it is never silent. Let's try them right to left this time. I hold it up to Abdul, and it goes beep because his hat is blue. I hold it up to Cheryl, and it goes beep because her hat is green. Marcy, beep. Joe, uh-oh, it's silent when I hold it up to Joe. That shows that my statement is false. The proof of this statement then is to hold up the Geiger counter to Joe. Let's sum up. To verify an existence statement, we have to find an example, Marcy. To disprove a universal statement, we have to find a counterexample, Joe. There's another fun type of statement we could look at. This is an if-then statement, also called a conditional statement. Here's an example. If someone has a green hat, then they have an even shoe size. Let me say that one more time. If someone has a green hat, then they have an even shoe size. It can be helpful to think of this as a social rule. Imagine we live in a future dystopia where the government has ruled that anyone wearing a green hat must wear even-sized shoes. This statement is true exactly when everyone is obeying the law. Now, the statement also can be used as a Geiger counter. What does this one do? Think of it as a real Geiger counter, a device which warns of danger. This one will go off if someone is flaunting the government rule. The government agents go around with the Geiger counter, and when it beeps at someone, they arrest that person for disobeying. Therefore, the Geiger counter is calibrated to detect people who are wearing green hats and odd shoe sizes. So let's take our Geiger counter out into the real world and hold it up to Joe. He has a red hat, so he's safe. He isn't flaunting our rule. Now hold it up to Marcy. She's wearing a blue hat too, so she gets off scot-free. Holding up to Cheryl is more interesting. She has a green hat, so the Geiger counter will also evaluate her shoe size. Fortunately, it's even, and so she is in compliance. Therefore, it doesn't go off. Finally, holding it up to Abdul is fine too. No beeps. Everyone is in compliance, so this statement is true. Now, we come to a very interesting twist. Suppose Cheryl moves to a less authoritarian land where she can wear whatever hats and shoes she likes. In any case, she leaves our room. Now, the Geiger counter still won't beep at anyone. Everyone is still in compliance, so the statement is still true. It's a weird kind of true, you might say, because there's no one with green hats at all. But it is true. It's called vacuous truth because no one satisfies the hypothesis. The metaphor is that in the vacuum of space, no matter exists. All right, finally, let's discuss negation. Every statement has a negation. What is the definition of negation? I don't want to go all formal logic on you, so here's how to think of it in terms of people with hats. Imagine a vast hotel full of infinitely many rooms. We've been looking in just one room, the one with Joe, Marcy, Cheryl, and Abdul. But imagine instead that this hotel has all possible rooms. Any possible combination of possible people is in some room in this hotel somewhere. Now take a statement like the ones we've been considering. As a statement, it is neither true nor false until you bring it into a room and consider who is there. There is someone with a blue hat in this room, maybe a true statement in one room, but false in another room. So a statement is like a device you can bring door to door, and at each door, like a tricorder, it'll register false or true for that hotel room. Okay, so what is the negation? It's the opposite device. If my statement tricorder reads false at some room, the negation tricorder reads true at the same room. If my statement tricorder reads true, the negation tricorder reads false. It has to behave like this throughout the entire hotel. Let's take the example of there is someone with a blue hat in this room. This tricorder reads true at rooms having blue hats and false otherwise. What's the opposite device? Something that reads false when there's a blue hat and reads true otherwise. Such a statement is, there is no one with a blue hat in this room. Every single room in our infinite hotel, no matter how we arrange the people in it, will read true with one tricorder and false on the other one. Which of the two tricorders reads true and which false will vary as we try different rooms, but it'll always be one true and one false. So the sentence, there is someone with a blue hat in this room, has the negation, there is no one with a blue hat in this room. Now let's try the conditional statement. It was, if someone has a green hat, then they have an even shoe size. Remember, it's helpful to think of this as a social rule. It will read false when the room contains a criminal. A criminal is someone having a green hat and an odd shoe size. So the negation of this sentence is a device which reads true exactly when the room contains a criminal. Therefore, the negation is, the room contains at least one person with a green hat and an odd shoe size. The negation isn't even a conditional statement. How weird. But it must be the correct negation because it will read true, the criminal's in the room, exactly when the original tricorder reads false, the criminal is in the room, and vice versa. This is why learning negation by algorithmic formal manipulation will more often than not cause you confusion. Instead, I encourage you to rephrase things as social rules, authoritarian governments, Geiger counters, and so on. This will help develop your intuition until you begin to feel that numbers, sets, functions, and mathematical objects are your familiar friends in math country. Good luck.